Hello and welcome to Vintage Video, the first South Dakota Grab Bag edition. I'm David Mossner. I'm calling this episode a grab bag because the stories don't necessarily go together, but tell stories I'd like to share. We start with a television celebrity making a visit to a South Dakota reservation. Then several stories that were near the top of the evening's newscast, before wrapping up the episode with a couple of features. The TV celebrity I covered is Ann Sword, who from 1980 to 1993 played Lila Montgomery on As the World Turns. When she made a trip to South Dakota, I covered the trip in part because we were a CBS affiliate which aired the popular soap opera.
To soap opera fans, she's Lila Montgomery on As the World Turns, but she left the fictional community of Oakdale for a Christmas party at Sintagaleshka College. Ann Sword, who plays Lila Montgomery, says she's been involved with the college for the past year.
I think it's a real solution to a lot of the problems, and it's sort of the guiding light, no pun intended. But it's a place of hope and great spirit and great knowledge, and I'm very impressed with the facilities and in the institution itself.
The line waiting to see Santa and receive a Christmas present stretched almost 2 city blocks. Those presents that brought happiness to little children came from people they never met who live in the New England states.
I had a big clothing drive and toy drive in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. And for the last month we've been collecting toys and children's clothing for all ages, and books and different goodies for Christmas.
A member of the Rosebud Sioux says the visit with the toys and clothing sends a strong message.
It means that people care in this country. You know, no matter where they're at, what level they're at, they care. And if you give them an opportunity to express that care, they'll do it.
Sword says she likes the philosophy of the people on the Rosebud.
It's the spirit of the Lakota way that grabbed me. You know, I've always been sort of a seeker of truth, and I'm active in my own church, and a lot of the principles and the morality and the values of Lakota way are the same.
Other trucks laden with gifts are accompanying Sword to the Yankton Reservation Sunday for another Christmas party. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Mission.
From the world of make-believe to real-world drama, we go to Oneida, South Dakota, home of professional golfers Kurt and Tom Byram. I was sent to their parents' house to get their reaction as Kurt won his first event as a pro.
Tap it in, that's it. He 3 putts, but that's good enough.
Kurt's victory in the Hardy Classic 7 weeks after Tom's win at the Kemper means a lot to Mom and Dad Byram, even more than Tom's win did.
Didn't start out as well this year as he had other year, or last year especially, and it just seemed like it was he's been trying harder to get there.
It was exciting when Tom won, but when you've got 2 boys, it's hard to have one do a lot better than the other. And you know, you just feel like you got to keep them kind of equal if you can, you know. And you don't like to see one win and not the other one win, because that's just too hard. It strains everything a little.
After breaking through on the tour, Elliott now sees even better days ahead.
Their games are better than they've ever been. They've learned a lot this summer about their swing and their game, and I really feel like they're kind of coming into their games.
And it'll be so much easier from now on. Or I suppose we're still going to be nervous about it, but these were the ones that we really were looking for.
One tournament Elliott and Lois Byram have their eyes on is the Masters to watch both Kurt and Tom play. They've already made their reservations for Augusta. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND Sports, Oneida.
We returned to the Rosebud Reservation for a sobriety march, which was made more dramatic by heavy snow. To shoot this story, I asked a person in attendance to drive my news vehicle so I could sit on the tailgate. The walk started in Kilgore, Nebraska, along the county road leading to the Rosebud Reservation, a road that has claimed Indian lives and alcohol-related accidents.
3 of my brothers were killed. Larry and Joe were killed on this road, and in memory of them, I'm walking.
At each spot along the road where there has been a fatal accident, a cross was planted.
We have a relative who died here not too long ago. And some of the relatives are here of that deceased. But this time, Father Jones and Joe Eagle Elk, a medicine man. We'll pray for those spirits.
Dear Lord, we thank you for gathering us together this morning.
Trouble with alcoholism and child abuse is the reason for the march and calling on the Great Spirit for help.
We've tried everything humanly possible to address these things. And this is our final plea.
This is a sad journey. I'm tired too, but that doesn't even seem to affect me now because I'm praying while I'm walking.
Organizers are praying that the Great Spirit helps the reservation conquer alcohol and end the need for sobriety marches. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Cherry County, Nebraska.
Next up are two pieces called Spot News. Reporters cover those stories as they happen, then tell the story to the viewers at home. The first chronicles 2 deaths on a very cold day.
A lot of people on the Rosebud Reservation use their feet to get from one place to another. The transportation turned tragic as the extreme cold is getting the blame for 2 deaths on the Rosebud Reservation.
They weren't prepared. I think they went out into the elements without being properly clothed. They weren't aware of the chilling factor of the wind.
Other reservations in the state say young and old are having problems with colds and respiratory problems brought on by the bone-chilling temperatures.
You get people out trying to dig themselves out to develop, breathing problems, and the older people, they tend to be less dependent on the government services, and result they're coming up with problems with their health.
Each winter on the Rosebud Reservation, there's a race between the money in the Low-Income Energy Assistance Fund and the cold weather. Usually, the cold weather wins.
We start assisting households in November, and to date, we've spent $221,000 already. So we only have like $91,000 left.
150 households will not get money this season, and cuts in funding energy assistance programs could mean a long cold winter in houses that aren't weatherized. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Rosebud.
The day of Pierre's first homicide in years occurred on a Saturday, when I happened to be downtown and red flashing lights caught my attention.
A phone call to police said there was a fight in room 22 of the Terrace Motel. When police arrived around 3:45, they found a man dead of stab wounds. Police identified the victim as 31-year-old Burl A. Janice of Eagle Butte. Police say Janice moved into the motel room in Pierre 2 weeks ago.
We do have a suspect in custody. He's been identified as Leonard Blue Thunder, 31 years of age, believed to be a resident of Pierre. He's been arrested or will be arrested in connection with the slaying.
Police say Leonard Blue Thunder was not injured in the fight. Blue Thunder will make his first appearance in Hughes County Circuit Court on Monday. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Pierre.
During my 3 years in South Dakota, the 1988 drought was by far the biggest story I covered. Here are 2 more about it, starting with the Governor's Conference in Chicago. To get there, I flew with the governor and his staff on his plane. Several years later, in 1993, Governor Mickelson's plane crashed, killing him and 7 others.
The 10 governors representing states from Ohio to Wyoming say they want a solution to the drought and its problems. Today's meeting focused on farm income, water supplies, livestock, and feed. Governor George Mickelson chaired the Livestock and Feed Committee.
The basic thing that we're talking about is hammering out specifics of how we might enhance the feed supply for livestock, both in the drought areas and the contiguous areas. And there's a lot of ideas thrown out here. Some are doable.
The governors agree one thing they can't do here is make it rain. A Chicago woman who came to the meeting says she can do just that.
The rain which came on Monday night was caused or created, I accept the responsibility for it, because on Saturday was the time when I had began prayer.
Diamond says she's willing to come to South Dakota. Governor Mickelson says he hasn't decided whether or not to invite Diamond. He is requesting the USDA to allow hay harvesting and grazing on conservation reserve land in the drought disaster counties and in nearby counties that have good hay crops. Some farm groups say programs like that and requests for guaranteed deficiency payments may get an added boost out of today's meeting.
This type of pressure applied onto the political process, the administrative process of Washington, And this type of meeting is extremely important to do that.
The 9 hours worth of meetings here today produced a lot of familiar ideas on how to ease the pain of the drought, ideas that will be compiled in a report and sent to Washington next week. But as usual, it's up to nature and Congress to decide if any relief from the drought is coming. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Chicago. Darrell Audis has tilled this soil more than 40 years. He says it's never been this dry before. Except for a surprising winter wheat crop, 1989 is a very poor year.
It's hard on the row crop for the feed, that's for sure. Winter wheat was good, but I don't know what it made on, but it did. The oats is just not even hay.
A poor year on the farm means a poor year for businesses that support farming. Grossenberg's is the largest John Deere dealership in the upper Midwest. The drought has cut its business by 30% and forced it to lay off several workers.
The thing that bothers us most in a drought situation like this is in the implement business is our combine sales. And combine sales are a big ticket item, and it shows quite a discount in our total dollars of the sales over the year.
While the drought bakes the countryside, here on Winter's Main Street, the effects of the drought aren't as severe as some had thought.
The business has been about the same as usual, just been a little change and maybe doing a little more repairing of some of those older items rather than buying a new one.
Hoping there won't be a third year of drought, work is already underway on the 1990 crop. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Tripp County.
In 1988, Senator Daniel Inouye from Hawaii joined South Dakota Senator Tom Daschle in a visit to West River, South Dakota.
The Hawaiian senator says he is making the visits to understand what Indians want and need from Washington.
We get ideas. Senator Daschle and I, just on this trip, learned a lot about the Indian Health Service, which you can't get in Washington.
Inouye is proposing a separate agency for Indian housing, enterprise zones on reservations for economic development, a non-government agency to help tribes comply with government regulations, and a federal bank for Indians.
The Indians told us they wanted to set up their own financing organization for Indians, for Indian development.
We have a right to succeed, and we also have a right to fail, and we can do that with our own financing, our own just everything.
Inouye says the tribes must learn to help themselves and not count on federal money to be the answer to everything. Senator Daschle says that's the way to go.
Indian people want to help themselves. They need to be given tools to do that, to help themselves, to build themselves up, rather than be given a handout from Washington.
Senator Inouye hopes that visits like these to Indian reservations can bring more ideas that will take flight and help Indians on the reservations. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Fayette.
It was rare to drive out of state to cover a story, but in 1989, protesters marched against locating a nuclear waste dump in Boyd County, Nebraska. Their battle lasted 20 years, with the opposition ultimately proving successful.
As long as we're standing there, they're not drilling.
Trucks carrying workers for U.S. Ecology turned away this morning when met by protesters outside their work site. Drilling and other tests on the land started just last week. U.S. Ecology's contractor, Bechtel, is testing the soil as part of a year-long study on the 320-acre site.
I don't want this dump in our county, or even in Nebraska.
It's a good thing. We wouldn't stand a chance of getting it anyway. It'd be down by Lincoln or Omaha, because we'd never get it.
They can't put it there because it'll hurt people. But we ain't people. I don't know what we are. I guess we're just kind of some sacrificial lamb that the government going to dump on us.
Another demonstrator says if a vote were taken, Boyd County would be nearly unanimously opposed to the dump. Company officials say the protests haven't put them behind schedule yet, but they've missed 2 working days.
We're out here basically to get information to better evaluate the site. It's information we haven't got yet, and which will answer, questions for both sides.
Ground testing is also being done in Nichols and Nemaha counties in Nebraska. The dump will be used by the states of Nebraska, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Kansas, and Arkansas. U.S. Ecology says it's a year away from choosing one of its 3 sites. They say they want the best and safest site. One demonstrator says even if this Boyd County location isn't picked, Nebraska is still a loser if either of the other 2 sites become a low-level radioactive waste dump. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Boyd County.
South Dakota's capital, Pierre, had fewer than 15,000 residents in 1990. It was even smaller in the 2010 census. Yet a small group of state employees came together to tell their story.
Jeff Panic never hears the rumble of the machine he calls Mad Max, but he says when he's working under deadline, the quiet is fine.
None of the noise bothers me. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't care. If there's a lot of noise.
Being the only deaf person in the office takes some getting used to. Panic's wife Belinda says the first days on the job were tough.
It was tough at first because all the people are hearing people, and it was hard for me to get along with them, especially in a group situation.
Karen Hoxing left Sioux Falls to start work in Pierre.
I really want to show how much ability that I have to do this work. I don't want hearing people to think that deaf people can't work or can't do jobs. I would like to show them that it is possible to do the work better.
Juanita Preeb says coming to Pierre where there isn't an established deaf community was hard, but says now she's one of the gang.
So I moved here to Pierre and I found the job and I really like it. And I encourage the deaf people not to just stay in Sioux Falls, but to spread out.
Co-workers are learning sign language to talk with their fellow employees, turning the sounds of silence into communication. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Pierre.
With so many acres dedicated to growing wheat, that golden grain was frequently in the news, especially when international buyers visited to check out the crop.
The Owyhee grain elevator was the first stop in South Dakota wheat country for the wheat officials from Israel, Finland, and Norway. The mission sponsored by wheat producers to demonstrate wheat production, marketing, and transportation in this country. While checking out the lows and highs of wheat storage, these trade officials say this year's U.S. drought is still a concern.
We are very concerned because we are depending on those grains, and it's not a question of paying higher prices or less prices. We depend on it and we need it.
With wheat country drought news sparking worries about U.S. wheat supplies, on this trip the news is, don't worry.
This year's crop was somewhat of a failure and we're not very proud of it, but we do have a lot of wheat in bins from previous years that is the quality that they're looking for.
All three countries represented grow some of their own wheat but must supplement their supplies.
We blend the U.S. wheat with the Norwegian wheat to get the right quality for our milling.
No sales were made on this visit, but South Dakota officials hope it got the word across about wheat supplies and hope it keeps their visitors buying U.S. wheat. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Herald.
As farmers and ranchers harvested bountiful crops of South Dakota wheat, they looked for better ways to deliver it to their customers. After years of declining rail service, the state engineered a track revival.
The little railroad that could help small ag towns and farmers is arriving in time for the winter wheat harvest. February 1980 was the last time a train passed through, so its return drew plenty of attention. Having a train to ship grain again should improve prices for farmers.
Just more dollars, per bushel, 8 to 10 cents a bushel. It's adding to the cheaper freight rate.
For the elevators in Reliance and Kennebec and other elevators down the line, having a train will help them compete.
It means that we'll be able to supply the farmers' wheat and grain raised around Kennebec into a larger market. We can expand our markets now.
And the long-forgotten rumblings of the train will help even Main Street.
When the farmers make money, so does Main Street. And farmers sure need a lift, and with the drought on, and this extra money for their crops would be a big help.
Dakota Southern Railroad is heading further west, first on to Murdo, and then to Kadoka by mid or late July, returning grain to Mitchell, and then by other trains to markets that were hard to reach before their train came in. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Kennebec.
That's it for this potpourri of South Dakota stories on Vintage Video. Thanks for joining me. I'm David Mossner. See you next time.